For years, if you watched YouTube, people would tell you that if you want to be taken seriously, you need full frame, bigger sensor, bigger camera, bigger price tag. That's what the real pros use. But what is interesting is that if you look at what people are buying, it's a very different story. According to global industry shipment data, smaller sensor mirrorless cameras, mainly APS-C, are outselling full frame by a massive margin. Not a little bit, not kind of, but approaching 2 to 1. And then that raises a thought-provoking question. If full frame is so obviously better, why are most people quietly choosing something else? Today, I want to break down what the real numbers say, what is happening, why it's happening, and what it means for you, especially if you are trying to make some smart gear decisions instead of copying what the YouTube gearhead masses tell you to do. There is a sort of unspoken rule in camera YouTube. You start with something small, you get your skills together, you collect some more money, and then you graduate, quote unquote, to full frame. And then once you are in full frame, you've made it in a sense, unless you start looking at Hasselblad's. Anyway, it's almost like a rite of passage. When you look at the social marketing of full frame, it's better image quality, better low light performance, more professional, more serious, whatever that means. And look, this is not a video calling out full frame. I own a full frame camera. I use it. I've reviewed it. I made money with it. So full frame is great. But what's weird in all of this is if full frame is the obvious end game, then logically it should dominate sales, shouldn't it? It should dominate what people spend their money on. But that's not what's happening. Right now, the only thing full frame is dominating is YouTube headlines and thumbnails. According to the CIPA, the Camera and Imaging Products Association, for 2025, APS-C and Micro Four Thirds cameras shipped approximately 4.45 million cameras. Full frame and larger shipped 2.54 million cameras. Let those numbers sink in for a moment. According to ship numbers, smaller sensored mirrorless cameras outsold full frame by roughly 75% more units. And you got to think, with the amount of new full frame cameras that are coming out each and every single year, how many of those are just people buying the FX2 that came out, and then 4 months later, the A7 IV that came out that makes the FX2 obsolete, so they have to get it. That's really nearly 2 million more APS-C cameras than full frame cameras if you do the numbers. So the next time some influencer is telling you everyone is moving to full frame, well, the data says otherwise. Now there are people that will come out and say, well, Arthur, full frame dominates the market, and in a way, yes, they are correct. Full frame cameras dominate in one area in particular, and that is in revenue. The cameras themselves cost way more money, so even if Canon, for example, sells fewer full frame cameras, they still make up a larger chunk of dollar revenue. And so what happens is a perception disparity. On YouTube, you will see expensive full frame bodies, high-end lenses, insane kits, so it feels like that's what everyone is using, but in reality, most people are buying lighter, cheaper, smaller APS-C cameras, but the revenue is kind of like a magnet to any camera company, so they have to go back and keep going back and focus everything on making new and more better and more bigger and more expensive full frame cameras. So you can have Sony release 4 new full frame cameras in the last year, but APS-C, maybe one camera every 4 years. And so if you are a camera YouTuber, what makes more sense? Making 16 videos because you have 16 new camera models coming out over the course of 4 years, or making 1 or 2 videos about the APS-C camera that comes out once every leap year? It becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I guess it's not really that bad because we do have Fuji and they are quite focused on APS-C. And I think a lot of the success of APS-C numbers is due to their efforts. What's interesting about this whole full frame pressure thing is that it's almost never about cameras. It's about comparison, feeling behind, thinking that you're not legit enough yet. And as photographers and just as people, that stuff adds up. I've talked to a lot of people who are stressed, overthinking, burnt out, constantly second guessing themselves, thinking that something is wrong with them. A lot of times they just haven't had a space to talk it through with someone who is neutral. That's one of the reasons I'm partnering with BetterHelp for this video. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched with a licensed therapist online so you can talk through things like stress, career pressure, imposter syndrome, or just feeling stuck. It's flexible and you can do it from home, which makes follow through way easier. If you've been carrying around more mental load than you realize, whether that's financial pressure, work stress, or just feeling like you are always behind, it might be worth checking out. If you go to betterhelp.com/ArthurR, you'll get 10% off of your first month, or just click on that link down in the description and it'll take you right there. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to why APS-C is quietly winning. There was a recent article about the best-selling mirrorless cameras on Amazon, and unfortunately Amazon does not release exact numbers, but on their bestseller lists were cameras such as the Canon R50, Sony ZV-E10, A6700, Fuji X-T, all APS-C cameras. If you look at retailers in Japan, all of their bestseller lists are also dominated by, you guessed it, APS-C camera bodies, particularly from Fuji, which has back orders and waiting lists longer than the wait for GTA 6. Now, some of you might be thinking, yeah, but those are beginners buying up all of these smaller cameras. Maybe. But are modern APS-C cameras any more or less beginner friendly than a full frame camera? The jury's really out on that one. The big difference is definitely cost. APS-C camera bodies themselves are roughly half the price. The lens selection is greater and the lenses are about half to 1/3 the price in some situations. So with APS-C, you can build a full kit for the price of, let's say, one really good G Master full frame lens, and you really aren't sacrificing performance. I'll say this again, apart from low light where the full frame sensor will be better, for most people the practical difference between these two cameras is near zero. People get this idea that somehow full frame cameras have better autofocus or something. They really don't. If you look at Sony, they have been trickling down all of their full frame technology to their APS-C line, but in the beginning, the APS-C cameras that came out, let's say in 2014, were several times better in terms of autofocus. Take the A6000 and compare it to the A7 that came out a few months earlier. The A6000's 13-year-old autofocus system today is still better than, hate to say it, most of Fuji's lineup. The Sony A7's autofocus, it's not good at all. That's why you'll see very few people still using that camera. 2018, the release of the A7 III, is really when full-frame Sony cameras started having autofocus that was on par with the A6000. That's a whopping 4 years later. And you look through modern APS-C camera specs, 4K video up to 120 FPS, log profiles, 10-bit colors, stabilization that's built in. Some of the Fujis also have open gate now. That gap that may have existed in the past where full frame had more features, nowadays I think that gap in features is razor thin. The practical difference, again, is near zero. Now, let me be fair and say that full frame still does make sense in some cases. If you are shooting ultra low light regularly, doing high-end commercial photography where every single pixel matters, shooting for, let's say, large prints on billboards constantly, or working with high-end clients where the appearance of expensive tools are appreciated or necessitated, it can be the right tool for the job. My point with this video isn't that full frame is dead. What's funny is that a few years ago, everyone was saying APS-C is dead, and based on 2025 numbers, that really isn't the case at all. The real point of this video is that sensor size does not and should not hold you back. Based on sales numbers, APS-C cameras are winning because they are lower friction. They are easier to afford. They are easier to carry around in some cases. They don't require insurance policies for you to feel comfortable carrying them around on a daily basis, or you won't be scared of using it, in other words. And the market is voting with its dollars, not because APS-C is magical or because it's better, but because for real life situations, it's quite good, more than good. So I am curious, if you guys are watching this, are you on APS-C? Are you on full frame? Are you thinking about switching? And if you are on full frame, what was that decision about? Was it about image quality or just the feeling of, well, maybe I should upgrade, and so why not? Drop that down in the comments. I read every single one of them. If this video did save you some money, hit that like button so that the algorithm stops recommending $5,000 camera kits to beginners. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for more, and have a nice day.